Wow. Jobs. Everyone has a job or wants a job. Jobs pay the bills. Jobs give a sense of meaning, purpose. I hate my job, but I do it. What is a job? A job has a lot of definitions, but put simply, a job can refer to a task or duty that someone or something has. The execution or performance of a task with a reward as incentive. Jobs today are all about incentives. Do I get paid time off? Do I get insurance? Do they have free lunch? All of these questions are something that you might ask yourself when you're looking for a job. At times, though, we don't have a choice. We just take the job we need. The job that will reward us now because we require what it gives us in the short term. Money, food, a place to stay. And we get these things from our jobs. But how did we get all these jobs? Where did they come from? And how did we make a system that can provide for everyone? Most people think of the first job as hunter or gatherer, but it's actually not. The oldest job ever was a tool maker. The oldest stone tools we have found are from 2.6 million years ago. These were made from quartz, obsidian, and flint. And sure, maybe these people weren't getting paid, but their payment was survival. Making tools was extremely necessary for these humanoids that lived in a very harsh environment. Make me a sharp rock, tool man, because I need to do the second job ever, which was hunting. The earliest evidence that we have of humanoids hunting was 1.8 million years ago in Tanzania. This was actually also when we first started eating meat. It's believed that we started hunting because of the climate change that made grasslands and semi-forested regions expand, making digestible plants less available. This led to a shift in diet towards meat, which is high in protein and fat and requires less chewing than some plants. This also had a major effect on our brain development. And the theory suggests that early humans evolved larger brains after switching from a plant-based diet to a meat diet. Now, we didn't only eat meat at this time, we still ate plants, but the meat in our diets definitely made a difference in our development. The theory is that the calorie-rich meat provided an excess of energy that could be used to support larger, more complex brains. More complex brains means more complex jobs. So the first job ever was a vegan toolmaker. Amazing. And the second job ever was a hunter/gatherer. Amazing. Fast forward to 200,000 years ago. Since there was no TV or phones 200,000 years ago, the next best thing was an old man who could remember every single event that ever happened, and the events that his grandpa and his grandpa and his grandpa told them. This was the storyteller, the historian. He remembered people, places, events, maybe your culture's origin story. All of the knowledge that was available in your culture was gathered and placed and passed down into one person. 200,000 years ago was actually also when we started to invent language. It was very simple at the time, but it is what would turn into what you're hearing right now. Many cultures throughout the world used storytelling to pass down their knowledge. Oral traditions can be found in countless parts of our history, so this was a very important job to have. People must have had amazing memories back then, because I can't even remember my own childhood. For many millennia after that, we wandered the earth, walking around quite a bit, moving out of Africa to other parts of the world. And this went on until the next job was created. 12,000 to 13,000 years ago in ancient Mesopotamia, the farming man changed humanity. Until 12,000 to 13,000 years ago, humans had to walk constantly to keep up with their food, to hunt it, and to gather whatever was around them, sometimes hiking 100 miles at a time just to get a sandwich. But thanks to the farming man, they could finally stay put. Our ancestors were collecting and eating wild grains from at least 20,000 BCE, but they did not start to cultivate crops until 12,000 to 13,000 years ago. Rye was one of the first grains people from Mesopotamia tried to farm. Around 9,500 BCE, the first 8 founder crops emerged. Emmer wheat, einkorn wheat, barley, peas, lentils, bitter vetch, don't know what that is, chickpeas, and flax. And they were cultivated by different groups in the Fertile Crescent. It's thought that farming was the most important invention in all of human history because it allowed us to stay in one spot and actually develop towns and develop culture more rapidly. Thanks to the farmer making stuff come out of the ground, people could make more people. Since there was more food, more people meant more jobs, which meant more food, which meant more people, which meant more jobs. Amazing. Things were getting a little crowded, and this caused people to start to quarrel over certain parts of the fertile land. It's theorized that farming brought about new power dynamics in human society. The theory goes, social elites, aka successful farmers, emerged as some people built up more land than others, driving men to want to make sure their farmland would pass down to their legitimate children. So they began to restrict women's sexual freedom and make sure their kids got the land that their parents acquired. Thus, the patriarchy was born, thanks to the farm man. Good job, farm man. You put men in charge. Hey son, when I die, all this corn is going to you. Don't let the neighbors take it away when I'm gone. Also, those weird fuzzy animals that hang around us and give us meat are ours too. Look after them. Fun fact, we also domesticated animals around the same time as farming started, and one of the first farm animals was goats. Mostly because the goats didn't care much about being fenced in. Amazing. Since we wanted to stay in one place, we could now make towns, but we need people to make the towns. And voila, the next job was born, the construction worker. The job of the construction worker was made about 10,000 years ago. Homes and dwellings were initially built by their inhabitants, but specialist builders eventually emerged as people developed more defined roles in society during this time. Around 2700 BCE in Mesopotamia, we decided that it was time to have people specifically dedicated to defending or invading people foreign to us, and the soldier was born. Of course, humans had been fighting each other since day one, but this was one of the first times that we had an organized group of people dedicated to fighting for society. Society was starting to form into what we are today. After a few more millennia, and with the advent of new travel methods, we took our stuff and went to other towns far away from us to exchange their stuff. Thus, the next job was created, the salesman. The Phoenicians were one of the earliest great merchant civilizations, dominating the Mediterranean trade routes from 1600 BCE to 600 BCE. They were skilled shipbuilders and sailors who built fast ships to transport their goods. By this time, society was really coming into its own, and more jobs started to emerge such as butchers, bakers, stonemason, carpenters, blacksmiths, weavers, winemakers, fishermen, shoemakers, merchants, and of course, the most hated job of all, the IRS, the taxman. Much of civilization was developing around the world in a similar manner, but at a different pace. Many people in the Middle East, Asia, Europe, and Africa at the time were advancing pretty fast, with the Americas lagging just a little bit. From 500 BCE to 1500 AD, everyone around the world was doing these jobs with technology advancing substantially along the way. Ships got bigger, the swords got sharper, the towns bigger, and cultures more defined. Digression. One of the most prevalent and worst jobs ever to be created by humans wasn't actually a job, but much worse. A job with no pay. Slavery. Of course, in a video about jobs, we must talk about slavery a little bit. Slavery is known to have existed in prehistoric times and was likely based on the domestication of animals. It was found in the world's most advanced regions during the earliest periods of recorded history, including Mesopotamia, Egypt, India, and China. The earliest known system of laws recognized slavery as an established institution. So while all these awesome jobs were evolving, around these jobs were slaves, doing whatever was told of them. Now, each civilization treated slaves differently, but the main point was that for most of civilization's existence, slavery was a thing. It's unfortunate, but it's a part of our human history. So, back to the 1500s. A new world has been discovered, and that new world has a lot of open positions for people to fill. Most jobs around the world at this time were similar to the ones that we said before, but we had some other fun additions starting in the mid-1700s. In Britain, they started making machines to make jobs faster, more efficient, and dangerous. Very exciting. The main features involved the First and Second Industrial Revolution. Major technological, socioeconomic, and cultural advancements happened during this time. The technical changes included the following: the use of new basic materials, iron and steel, the use of new energy sources, coal, steam, with the Second Industrial Revolution featuring electricity, oil, and the combustion engine. A new type of work started to emerge, the factory system, which entailed an increased amount of labor and specialization. There were also lots of developments in transportation and communication, including the steam locomotive, steamship, automobile, airplane, telegraph, and radio. This was the increasing application of science to industry. These technological changes made so many things possible. It increased the use of natural resources and the mass production of goods. Fantastic. We have factories now, and lots of people are going to work in these factories. In the beginning of this revolution, workers' poverty and misery increased from previous years. This consisted of long work hours with low wages, living in unsanitary conditions near the factories with no safety net for workers. People were working 100 hours a week at this time, and since labor laws didn't exist, everybody worked. So there were jobs for everyone, but this wasn't necessarily a good thing. The relationship to the factory owner and the factory worker was quite tense, with the factory job completely changed how we view jobs and working in general. Thankfully, during this time though, there were certain people who were trying to have a little bit of a work-life balance. In 1810, a man named Robert Owen, who owned a textile factory, implemented a 10-hour workday. By 1817, he made it an 8-hour workday. Amazing. 8 hours of labor, 8 hours of rest, and 8 hours of recreation was his mentality. And if you think this was a good idea, you might be a socialist, because Robert Owen was. After the First and Second Industrial Revolution, we were thrust into the modern world, with modern jobs, with the next change happening in the 1920s. Henry Ford revolutionized work as we know it, with the utilization of the assembly line. Instead of having master craftsmen who know how to make many things into one final product, Ford had workers making one thing at a time as their whole job, crafting one piece of the final product as it moved across the assembly line until it got to the end when it would be completed. Ford was also one of the first to officially offer the 5-day work week with 8-hour workdays. And this was quite a warm welcome, because as we stated before, jobs in the First and Second Industrial Revolution had 100-hour work weeks. And this was one of the first times anyone really offered a 40-hour work week. And the new age of jobs was just beginning. So to recap a little bit, we went from a handful of jobs, tool makers, hunter-gatherers, the historian, to the farming man, to so many different jobs in just the span of 2.6 million years. Who knew jobs were that old? Today, jobs are massive. Jobs are everything. Depending on where you live, your culture, your job, and how people view it, it might be very different. But one thing has stayed the same since the first tool maker. We need people to work. We need people to make things happen. And people are what make it happen. And I think that's pretty neat. People are the lifeblood of civilization. And who knows what types of jobs will come next. With artificial intelligence and World War III around the corner, we can only imagine the exciting jobs that the world will need in the years to come. I can't wait. Thank you guys for watching the video. I really appreciate it. I thought it might be fun just to do something a little historical and a little bit relevant to everyone's life, because we all have jobs. Hopefully you don't hate your job as much as I do. But if you do, welcome to the club.